Aye.
Short Bus Debate Club. It's a bus rolling.
I can get on board. Hello, I'm Darren Jolly.
It's time to get this short bus started. So let's roll and on with the show. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever it is, wherever the fuck you are. This is Brian Courtney with Short Bus Debate Club. And as always, I have Darren Jolly with me.
Hello.
Today, we are going to be talking about banned books. Thought it was important because, I don't know, mid-September, I think September 18th is Banned Books Week. So it kind of covers a couple of my favorite things, books and censorship. I don't like censorship, but I like talking about it because it's definitely there. Let me hand it over to Darren.
It's weird when you go down these lists and you look at things that people decide to ban sometimes. We had that episode where we were talking about the paternalism of the state, and paternalism, either way. It's just, when we're like, one of the things that popped out at me was Captain Underpants. I mean, my God,
Hold on. Before we jump into, what is being banned and what's on the list and what isn't, I think it's important to tell people about the list because I don't know if they know what it is or have even heard about it. So the American Library Association is basically a group of librarians that works to, keep libraries open for one, keep books on the shelves for another, but they also compile this list. So basically what happens is if you're a school in wherever and you decide to challenge a book, the ALA is going to say, okay, this book was challenged. If that book actually gets banned, then the ALA is going to say, okay, this book got banned. So historically, Darren just mentioned Captain Underpants. But historically, Grapes of Wrath have been on there. Of Mice and Men. 1984, An Animal Farm.
every fucking good book that you can think about reading seems to show up on these fucking lists.
Yes. And what's funny about it, though, is that they always say, because Darren was talking about the protective thing, they always say, well, we did it to protect kids.
How did they, what's the process? How do they go through the process of banning them in the first place?
Well, so, it depends on the municipality. If you're in, but fuck, I'm a hillbilly right-wing Bible-thumping Arkansas, and there's only, a few people on the city council or the school board, then you say, I don't like this book, and they say, okay, let's take it off the shelf.
How did they get the information? So they publicly, are they the library, that ALA organization, they just go and look through, do they contact these municipalities? How are they?
I don't know. I would imagine that at least in some cases, some outraged parent somewhere is complaining about it.
Uh-huh.
Because again, so like, it is Of Mice and Men, right? Lenny likes rabbits, blah, 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 right? So, and it's a good book. I didn't mean to blah, blah, blah. But they banned that book. And again, they said it was because of protecting the children because there were provocative sex scenes in the book. But really why they banned it was because they were afraid that it was going to harm agriculture in that Central Valley of California. So that's why they banned it. And I think the Grapes of Wrath was banned for a similar reason.
Yeah.
The Jungle. That wasn't banned for the same reason. I was going to say they were banned because it was going to fuck with slaughterhouse business, but that was written so far after that it didn't mess with it. But there were lots of them like that. We were joking around before we started because Darren said, "Oh, Huck Finn," and I said, "Yeah, that's a great fucking book." And I don't know really why they banned it, because there's nothing bad in it, and I can't see on the list, or maybe I missed it, why they said it was banned. Personally, I believe it was banned just for racist reasons, because there was a little white kid with, a former slave, or a runaway slave. And I think that's why it was banned, because they didn't want, like, white people talking to black people.
So what I found, so Huckleberry Finn banned immediately after publication. The book was banned on the recommendation of public commissioners in Concord, Massachusetts, who described it as racist, coarse, trashy, inelegant, irreligious, obsolete, inaccurate, and mindless.
Yeah. So they banned it for being racist. It wasn't them being racist for banning the book. It was the book was racist, and that's why they banned it. See, they're always out to protect us. I love that about them.
Well, in retrospect, like the way that sometimes in the moment when people get so heated, like right now, when you have your Twitter pile-on fucking moments, when everybody gets all, angry and, self-fucking righteous and woke and all that shit, you do stupid things. You need to take a second and think about a thing, study a thing, engage with that thing before you make a determination about whether or not it's appropriate to be in any way. Like I don't know, there's this thing I heard that's called the First Amendment, I mean, I'm not sure. I know that they talk about the establishment of religion being against the rules, but I think somehow or another self-expression is supposed to be protected as well. I mean, where would we be without books? Where would we be without Huck Finn, without Toni Morrison? I mean, I don't know, man. Give me a fucking break.
Well, and that's why the ALA does this, and they actually are a nonprofit, so they work through donations. But they work tirelessly to make sure that these books stay on the shelves. And I'm pretty sure that they are helping to make sure that we don't end up in a state where they're just doing mass book burnings like Fahrenheit 451. Because these books, regardless of whether or not you agree with what the book says or believe what the book says, the words are important because they expand your mind. They help with your vocabulary. They do so many fucking things that frankly, I mean, TV can't do. And I like TV. Well, I don't like TV. I like movies. There's a difference. I don't like commercials, really. But books, I mean, I don't know where we'd be without them.
They're a concrete historical testament to a specific moment, right? Like Mein Kampf, right? Mein Kampf is fucked up, and it displays like horribly perverted thoughts that this individual got into. But you cannot just, I know it's still banned in Germany. Like you cannot have Mein Kampf. But I think it's important to have these horrible things along with the great things so that we have this historical record of who and what we are. If we start to hide ourselves from those things or try to push them into the background or eliminate them, then, I don't like Winston Churchill's statement that history, if you don't learn, then history repeats itself. But there is a measure of truth in the idea that if you don't at least face what it is that you've done or where you've been or, who it is that you were, and maybe in some respects still are not capable of dealing with the aspects of that thing, then you're basically going to push yourself back down similar roads. So,
and now I just had a brain fart, so I can't remember who the hell it was. I'm pretty sure it was Gene Roddenberry, but that doesn't sound right for some reason. But, you know, somebody asked him a question on how he learned to write, and he said, I just read, and I read, and I read, and I read. I read good stuff. I read bad stuff. I read, and I read, and I read. I read everything. So regardless of whether you want to be a writer or not, you know, it opens you up to a whole new world. And personally, I like fiction better than nonfiction. But, you know, if you like documentaries, then maybe nonfiction is your thing. I can't think of any nonfiction books that were on the banned books list.
Mein Kampf is I mean, it's not on.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I know. But I was thinking more like I don't know, some like a real. But I think maybe a lot of that is because sports people and actors would end up ghostwriting them anyway. I know all of the Jersey Shore people have a bunch of books that you can buy. I'm pretty sure those were ghostwritten.
Well, if there's any books that need to be burned, it's probably the people from the Jersey Shore.
Not that I'm talking shit about the Jersey Shore, but here's something.
I am.
I wanted to read this because when I was looking up the banned books list, I thought that this was a really cool quote. John Stuart Mill wrote in On Liberty that if all mankind minus one were of one opinion, and only one person were of the contrary opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he, if he had the power, would be justified in silencing mankind. That's fucking brilliant. And obviously a little misogynistic, but you gotta consider when it was written. So yeah, we don't want to ban books. And Darren said at the beginning of the show that every fucking good book ever was on this banned book list at one time or another. And I know for a fact that some of my favorites are there. You know, I mentioned 1984 and Animal Farm. A Brave New World is always on there. Ulysses is on there. Catcher in the Rye is on there.
Why do you think that we, like, socially continue to resort to, like, we maintain that we believe in these certain dispositions, right? We believe in freedom of speech. We believe in freedom of expression. But then it always becomes so conditional. Like, it's one thing, like, and of course, once I say it's one thing, then you're starting to go down the exception road. But when somebody can be injured, you know, like there was a law. It was a Supreme Court case. Yeah, the fire in the movie theater thing. That obviously makes perfect sense. But like some of this shit is just so obnoxious. Like it pushes us. So why do you think?
I think it's because we like to live our lives on a slippery slope, dude. And that's the problem. I don't personally like to be on a slippery slope, but everyone around me seems to, especially our legislators.
What do you mean?
Well, because, you know, when they start to create that one exception, then, you know, we put our foot down and we start to slide down that hill a little bit, and we're on a slippery slope. And I know that I don't want to get into the whole philosophical thing about a slippery slope, but what I was getting at is that it's dangerous when we start creating exceptions, because if we can create one, then we can create another, and pretty soon the entire idea that was here is gone because it's hidden behind all of these exceptions and these rules. You know, here's what I would like to see happen, not just with books, but, you know, is that with my freedom of expression, my freedom of speech, is that I can say anything that I want until my rights begin to impede on yours. And if my rights impede on yours, then it's no longer my right.
Okay, so in terms of the concept of impediment, right? So when I hear the maternalist paternalistic disposition, the concept of being offended becomes something that people utilize as an impediment. So, like, you can say impede on some, but you have to define clearly, because people need to be fucking offended. I mean, it's important to, you know, to but you understand what I'm saying. They think that you're impeding on them when you're offending them at that point.
But see, that's where they're wrong, because if the book was offensive, they don't have to fucking read it. If the TV show offends them, turn the fucking channel. Just because it's on doesn't mean you have to watch it. And it's not up to us to make sure your kids don't read that book. It's up to you. But it should still be on the shelves of your local library. If you don't want them to read it because it has sex in it, or because it has racism or sex,
well, I mean,
or sex or language.
Well, you like, we looked at the newest stuff. The newest stuff, a lot of it has to do with, you know, the LGBTQ plus stuff. Like, parents are hyper conscious of that space all of a sudden. Like,
yeah, I don't know, and I'm sorry, people who are listening to this. I haven't read most of the books that are on the current banned list or challenge list. I saw 13 Reasons Why on Netflix, and I can understand why some parents may think that that's dangerous, because it was talking about suicide. But some of the other shit, I think there's one book on there called
Genderqueer.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that is. Have no idea what it's about. I'm pretty sure it's something to do with queer and gender something. That's all I got.
But because we believe what we believe, the point is that parents should be stopping their children from reading that stuff, but it should not be removed from the shelves. And if the kid, you know, I mean, the fact of the matter is that when kids are negotiating complex questions about identity, because you can't really be effective in a world until you know who you are. You know, you're in the world, you know, yourself, and then you have to become yourself in the world. So sometimes you have to go through the process of, you know, examining some pretty complicated stuff, which means that you might read some books that might scare your parents a little bit because they never negotiated those questions. But if you need to negotiate those questions, you know, the ability for a person to explore those concepts, those ideas, those thoughts, those, you know, various different complex spaces is essential.
Well, and so I'm going to kind of go a different direction with this, but regardless of what type of book it was, you know, a lot of the writers on this list didn't get to see the benefits of it. Vonnegut probably did. But when I wrote my book, I hoped and prayed, and when I say prayed, I don't actually mean to a deity. I hoped and prayed.
I'm glad you made that clear.
That I would make it on the banned books list. Because if you could make it on the banned books list, then that means, well, a couple of things. One, it means you pissed a couple of people off. Mm-hmm. And two, it means that enough people fucking read your book that you made it on the list.
Yeah.
So these people, I'm guessing these authors, regardless of what the topic was, I'm sure they're pretty happy that they made it onto that list.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is that like if you go through the decades, you know, like there were certain concepts, like the ones that were from the 20th century. They're all the major, Western European, generally
You mean
speaking.
the Radcliffe ones?
Yeah, the Radcliffe stuff it's all the major Western European writing that nowadays you're either reading in high school or you sort of need to kind of read if you want to be a part of the psyche of our current existence. But when you get into 2020 and the 21st century, what it is that's being banned, I mean, it's shifted. Like tons and tons and tons of the stuff has to deal with sexual identity, you know, like how a person identifies themselves. I mean, it's just over and over and over again, you know, like, so like what I'm saying is that we always ban whatever our current complex social questions are, because a lot of people are afraid of negotiating them.
That I think is a true statement, but yeah, so if it wasn't books that they were complaining about, it would be something else because, well, I think people need something to complain about for one, but two, I think that they are trying to work out how to negotiate these questions. One time I was in Seattle, and Seattle, it's not strictly because of Amazon, or maybe Amazon is as open as they are because they were in Seattle, because they moved now, but my cab driver was complaining because they had male bathrooms and female bathrooms, and now they had these bathrooms that were like the they bathrooms, right? Or the, what do they call that? Gender neutral?
Yeah, sure. Non-binary, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the cab driver was complaining about this, and he hadn't read a book about it. I mean, but he was trying to negotiate this social question that had impacted him on a daily basis. And I think that that's an important part of it too, is that we've got to remember that for the most part, people don't start thinking about one thing or another until it impacts them somehow.
Directly, yeah.
You know, once it starts influencing their life in one way or another, that's when they start thinking about it. And I think that's the case for most everybody. I don't want to make it sound like I'm special or something, but you know, I try to walk a mile in another person's shoes. I don't necessarily succeed, but I try. I'm gonna pat myself on the back now.
Yeah. No. Good job. You did a good job, Brian.
So I looked at the Radcliffe list, and I think this is really cool. If you guys ever get a chance, go to the ALI website and pull up the Radcliffe list, because it shows a lot of the challenges and a lot of the, you know, the bannings, and when they happened and why. But, you know, The Catcher in the Rye, there's a huge fucking list of reasons and time frames. I mean, from 1977 up through 2009. And I don't want to read all of them, but one of them here really makes me laugh because it was challenged because it was anti-white and obscene. So I don't know what the hell in that book made it anti-white. And I mean, can you think of anything, Darren? I've read that book a few times, and I can't think of anything that was anti-white.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Catcher in the Rye, I think about the fact that everybody that shoots a president has the book, you know? I mean, it's good. I don't think that has anything to do with race. I don't even remember them even negotiating the concept of race, period, in the book.
It was anti-private school, I think.
Well,
maybe.
He antisocial. I mean, he definitely was, like angsty, I mean, he was struggling with shit,
But so I was wrong about the date anyway. So when it was anti-white and obscene, it was in 1963. A delegation of parents in Columbus, Ohio, asked the school board to ban it. The school board did, however, refuse the request, which is very cool.
Yep.
But that's one of my favorite books. I love that book. Grapes of Wrath,
Holden Caulfield was such a weirdo in that book, dude.
To Kill a Mockingbird, good book.
That racist is what they always say with that one. I like Invisible Man. That's my favorite book. I can't fucking believe that they would ever. It's just stupid. Just a beautiful inquiry into how a person becomes who they are. I mean, I just don't.
Well, and the overcoming of lots of different things,
Yeah.
right? From moving from one region to another, trying to find a fucking job, which isn't always easy. I mean, and just feeling invisible just in the wash of everyone.
Yeah. The paint imagery, so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Optic white, fucking
It's
brilliant.
Awesome. This is kind of weird to me. 1984 technically isn't on the list, but it was challenged in 1981 because of pro-communist and explicit sexual matter. That is, if you guys have not read that book, and you like The Matrix, V for Vendetta, maybe.
Yeah, V for Vendetta draws directly. I mean, draws directly from fucking 1984.
I highly suggest it. I don't know. What are some of them on the list that you like or don't like? Catch-22, great fucking book.
Lord of the Rings, dude. I don't get that. Slaughterhouse 5, dude. I mean, fuck, dude. I mean, you don't understand anything about what was going on during those wars unless you understand those bombs that were going off and what was going on inside of people's heads, man.
Well, Slaughterhouse 5, I mean, so personally, I had never heard of Dresden or the bad shit that had happened there until I read Slaughterhouse 5. When I read Slaughterhouse 5, when I went over to Europe a couple of times, I was talking to those people, and a lot of the Germans don't even know, exactly how many were killed. But I'm sure that Slaughterhouse 5 was banned mainly because both the United States and Germany are fucking embarrassed that it ever happened to begin with, that they killed all of those fucking people, that they don't really know how many. Like, a low estimate is like 12,000.
I mean, the fire bombs were devastating. So it's I mean, that's like I said earlier. Like, you need those historical snapshots so that you can not only understand what was happening, but understand the psyche. You see the image that's being projected by the writer. And the thoughts that go through the mind of the individual. I definitely gotta. I've never read the Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie, but when he wrote that book, he's had to live his entire life with bodyguards around him, and he's recovering from. He got attacked like crazy and got stabbed a bunch of times by somebody. I mean, and he's been one of the greatest advocates for free speech and for the importance of being able to express yourself through literature in the world for the last 50 years or so.
Now, while I did want to be on the banned book list, I didn't necessarily want to be stabbed.
Come on, dude, it'd be like war wounds,
I can see that, maybe there's some benefit in that. I bet you if he writes another book right now, he'd get published right away.
Yeah, I don't think that he'll ever have problems finding anybody to publish a book for him anyway. But
that is, I wasn't saying that he would. But.
Naked Lunch. That was a fucking weird one. Heroin and sex.
I've got that book at home. I still haven't read it yet.
The Tropic of Cancer. George Costanza.
Can't stand you.
Can't stand you.
Sorry, that was a Seinfeld reference if you're under the age of 35. So on the Radcliffe list, at least, Hemingway is on here a bunch. And Hemingway, I loved his writing. I think probably, I don't know, like, I didn't read the Wise. A lot of the places he was banned or challenged are overseas in Spain and Turkey. I think if he was banned in the United States, a lot of it would have to do with sex. Because a couple of his books had some pretty good sex scenes in them. Especially, yeah.
Why in the world were they going after Dr. Seuss?
I don't know. Was it something to do with LSD?
I don't know. But, like, I remember recently there was something that went down where, let's see, 6 books won't be published anymore because they portray people in hurtful and wrong ways. The Cat's Quizzer, Scrambled Egg Super, On Beyond Zebra, McElligot's Pool, If I Ran to the Zoo, and To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street.
I think it's because people are whack jobs and they maybe have too much time on their hands. Was it, it was one of the reverends, wasn't it, that was going after the Teletubbies? Now, the Teletubbies were fucking stupid and irritating as hell. And I know that this is television. But he was going after the Teletubbies because he thought one of them was a homo. What the fuck?
Tinky Winky?
I don't know the name of the Teletubby. I'm trying to think of the name of the fucking reverend, not the Teletubby.
I only remember Josh would be talking about Tinky Winky. Josh was an idiot.
Josh really loved the Teletubbies. And Josh, yeah, he was kind of an idiot, for sure. Reverend. If you guys know, why don't you hit me on Twitter? Except this isn't a live show, so that's not going to do anything. Yeah, I think it's just because people might have too much fucking time on their hands and they like to, yeah, it was Jerry Falwell.
Okay.
He went after him because one of them, I don't know, I guess the one with the triangle on his head, the purple one.
That's Tinky Winky.
Oh, it is Tinky Winky, yeah. Nice memory, dude. Way to remember the name of fucking...
It's not, it was all Josh. He just would say Tinky Winky all the time. Tinky Winky.
Okay, so, and Jerry Falwell may indeed have too much time on his hands. So yeah, now I fucking don't have anything to say except Tinky Winky, apparently.
Well, people do have too much time on their hands. Like, why in anybody's name would anybody look for something like, or Dr. Seuss for that matter? I mean, it looked like it was saying that there are racist undertones in those books, but I'm not sure that you want to just get rid of all that stuff. I remember that Brer Rabbit stuff. I mean, you don't put it out like, maybe necessarily celebrate it, but you need to have memories of the bad and the odd thoughts that people maintain throughout time. If you start throwing them away or hiding them away, I mean, honestly, like we're still racist as a society, generally speaking. Like it's not something that's going to go away without, like, you can't ban a book and make it disappear. That's not the way that it works.
No, open communication is the way to make that happen, but they don't want it to go away. They want us to hate each other.
Divide and conquer.
That is correct. So go after Dr. Seuss if that's what you have to do. Which I didn't like Dr. Seuss, and I thought his fucking animation was creepy. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to burn the book or tell you you can't have it. Even if you were my kid, I'd probably let you have it. I wouldn't buy it for you, but you can have it. Fuck, you can have the Bible if you want. That is a spectacular work of fiction that should be on the banned book list.
A spectacular work of fiction. Did y'all get that? Did you understand what he said?
For those of you from Texas over to the Panhandle in Florida, I was saying that the book that you read religiously, or at least let someone read to you, is not true.
Not everybody down there though. Just you know who it applies to, you know who it doesn't apply. And there's some people in like Western Colorado that are there's a lot of those kooks all over the place.
No, I was just going with the Bible Belt. That's all.
Yeah, I got you. I just didn't want to alienate anybody. So
yeah, we can spread it around. There are plenty of dipshits all over. I don't know what the fuck he's doing. He's trying to read something or something because I just keep talking and rambling and rambling.
No,
so
we're fine. I was just ad-libbing in the middle of it all. Robert Cromie, Chocolate War. I loved that book as a kid. I liked I Am Cheese too, but I don't think that one ever got banned. But I don't understand why Chocolate War got banned. But it's just really incredibly obnoxious. I too much time on your hands. That's for sure. Go away. Take care of your own shit. Let me take care of mine.
I agree. I think that is a very important concept that more people need to take hold of and try to understand, because just because you want to watch one thing or read one thing, and you know, maybe you want me to read it and watch it too, that's fine. But don't tell me that I can't read or watch what I want because of, you know, whatever. You know, don't buy the book, turn the page, turn the channel, put it down, but leave people alone. It's important. And maybe if you read more of those fucking books, you wouldn't be so narrow-minded anyway. And I did mention that Banned Books Week is coming up in September, right? I thought I did.
You did, yeah. So I think somewhere around the 18th, you were saying.
Yeah.
Roald Dahl. I mean, how can you ban Roald Dahl? I mean, I know he was kind of a weirdo in real life, but I love his stuff, man. That dude made me laugh.
Any of these guys. And like you said, historically, if it was a good book, it was on the list. You know, it's funny. I'm going to have to try to find it, and maybe we can do a show about it. They did a study and looked at, like, mandatory 7th grade reading in, like, 1920. And then they did mandatory 7th grade reading in, like, 2020. And the level dropped substantially as far as, you know, technical level, I guess you'd call it, from those 100 years or 80 years or whatever the list ended up being. I'll look it up and find it. But what I was getting at is that the books probably on that 1920 list were some of the books that Darren and I were talking about. You know, if it's the great book, it was banned, like the Twain books and things like that. But now on the list, you've got stuff like 50 Shades of Grey. That's a shit book. Hunger Games, that was an okay book.
I like those books. They were fine. I liked that it motivated revolutionary thoughts in kids. I think that was there's value in that.
Yes. Yes. I remember Aaron's daughter Gwen with her fucking bow and arrow when we went camping because of that book. It was her that
It was,
did
yeah.
the shooting, right? Or the arrow, right?
Yeah. That's Katniss
Yeah.
Everdeen. Yes.
I preferred the Divergent books to Hunger Games.
Oh, I thought that editing in particularly the second and the third books were horrible in those ones. I have to go back and reread them again at some point in time because I like those series books where I need to probably read Maze Runner too. I like those weird ones where they
the
make.
Maze Runner was good.
Did
too.
you?
I
read?
didn't.
Okay.
I mean the movies.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I kind of gave up on the book thing. Probably, though 50 Shades of Grey, which I haven't seen that movie, but I have read at least portions of the book. She's a shit writer, and she is rich beyond all fucking imagination now, and not just because of the publishing, but because she's selling fucking 50 Shades of Grey dildos and anal beads and shit. It's fucking outrageous. It's crazy.
50 Shades of Anal Beads.
I guess, right.
The Golden Compass, because of religious stuff. Those were so. Because of my daughter, I read a lot of the young teen fiction stuff because she read. I mean, Harry Potter. That was another one that got banned
On a lot of occasions.
Yeah, and we read, like, I fought with her about that. I said, what's better? But she read vociferously. She read crazy when she was a kid, but she was reading trash, so I tried to get her to read some other stuff. So I got the first Harry Potter book, and I set it on the couch, and I said, what's better? I said, the books or the movies? And she said, the movies. And she was just in a stage where she just was against me on everything, right? So I let it sit there for 2 weeks, and then I brought it home, and only through Order of Phoenix was out at that point in time. Book 6 and Book 7 hadn't come out yet. But the week following, after I returned the book, she went and got a copy of it, and she of course she read the first one in a day. She was done. She was through Order of the Phoenix by the end of the next week. Because that's just kind of how she'd read all night long, and then she'd go to school and fall asleep in her classes all the time. That's my kid. She's hilarious like that. But after that point, like, stuff had come out, and we'd read it together. We read Rick Riordan, the Percy Jackson stuff. We went that stuff, something I've never heard has ever been banned. But I'm sure somebody'd find something to ban about it, some stupid fucking thing. But the Philip Pullman books, and a bunch of all those the Hunger Games stuff, the Divergent stuff. We read it. She read Divergent. She's like, this lady needs to get shit and editing getting taken care of. But she was right about that with that. But I love a lot of those young kid books, but I haven't gotten to Maze Runner yet. So at some point in time, I just don't have any time. I just listen to shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of good books out there, and sometimes the writing's good, story not good, story good, writing not good. Maybe that's the case with 50 Shades of Grey. Maybe the story is great.
Maybe
they made a movie out of it.
Maybe it would be better if you used the anal beads while you were reading them.
Yeah, I guess that could be the case. So yeah, I would, if you got a favorite banned book, let us know. You can reach us on Twitter or on TikTok. I'm still working on the Facebook / whatever other social media there is.
720-334-ROLL.
Yeah, that's our phone number if you want to call or text. I mean, there's a lot to say about books. We could probably say a bunch more. And just real quick, though, before we close out, I mean, what are some of your favorites? I mean, I talked about 1984, Brave New World. Or what's your favorite author on the banned book list? You.
Well, Ralph Ellison. I mean, Invisible Man.
Okay.
That's my favorite book. I mean, like every one of those that you said, though, those are all ones that that had an incredible influence over me. All that science fiction stuff from the early days when they were imagining these like dystopian societies. I always like the imagining dystopian futures because I think that's the function of science fiction is that you imagine what could be, and then you try to understand where you're going, where you're at, and either correct or move in a different direction. So I mean, Aldous Huxley, man, fucking that's important stuff.
I always think it's so funny that in Orwell, they just use power to control everybody, and this like iron fist type control. And in Huxley's stuff, they use drugs with a little bit of this influence. And I
Soma.
that's the best way to distinguish the two of them, and is that the one used drugs and then the other one pictured this just authoritarian. You don't get drugs, you barely get coffee.
It's interesting though how everybody associated that with communism. That his rhetorical disposition in that space was about. Because if you listen, Orwell even talks about it. He was talking about government and social existence in general, suggesting that could happen in the United States as well. It wasn't just a critique of the Soviet Union.
They have to say that shit, because if you don't and people start to like that book, then it's that thing. They're afraid maybe they'll see the light. And so now if somebody reads 1984 and I'm not going to say that I like it because it's associated with communism, and we know how they feel about communism. I mean, they fucking tried to burn down Hollywood because of it and all of this other shit. So, they have to say that shit, I think. And it's fucking horrible, but if whatever. Anyway, we're over the 45. We got a good show coming up on political correctness, so I highly encourage you to join us on Friday. What else you got to say?
It's a good day. We'll see you soon.
It's an okay day. We'll talk to you later.
That's positivity, folks. Later.